Welcome back to the Junkie Sports Podcast today. So today we are going to do our little recap of the NBA draft, the 2020 NBA draft, and sort of do our winners and losers from the draft, our takeaways from that sort of aspect. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Davis, kick us off. Who's your first winner of the NBA draft?
I think this should come as no surprise to a lot of people, but I'm going to go with the Philadelphia 76ers. So not only were they able to scoop up Tyrese Maxey at the 21 slot, which is, a lot of teams are probably surprised that he was still available. So I think they're getting good value in that pick. But they were also heavily active on some big trades on draft night that I think will pay dividends down the line. And, I think this is saying a lot for Daryl Morey and what he's able to do immediately as, the GM up there in Philadelphia. But, being able to unload Al Horford's contract is something they've been looking to do for the offseason. They were able to successfully do that on draft night. And they traded the, the 20 they traded one of their picks and Josh Richardson and got an elite shooter and Seth Curry to space around and help open up the floor for them. And they also brought in who was it? Isaiah Joe at the 49th pick, which he was another guy that I thought could have gone a lot higher, but he's another elite shooter that they brought in him. And then they brought in Paul Reed as well. And so I think when you look at it from an overall standpoint, they didn't have, an outstanding night getting value from each of their picks, but I think what they were able to do with their trades to kind of help, remodel their franchise going forward, getting rid of Al Horford, getting more shooters to kind of space the floor around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. I think overall, we're going to be able to look back on this draft night and see them as a clear winner.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think Daryl Morey I think everyone was sort of expecting him to begin making these moves at draft night, sort of when he started winning and started just cranking out these trades. And I agree. I think the Seth Curry pickup is going to be immensely huge for the 76ers and really help space the floor for them. Getting rid of that Al Horford contract, definitely a big deal. I don't know. I do expect them to make some more moves going in here in the next week or so. Free agency starting up. I definitely see them kind of doing some more things to try and restructure that offense a little bit and allow Doc Rivers to sort of create a game plan going forward to kind of put them in contention for a chip next year. But I'm going to go ahead and go and do my first winner of the NBA draft, and that is the Detroit Pistons. I thought they had just an absolutely incredible draft night. Picking up Killian Hayes at pick 7. I think that was just a great pickup for them. I'm not crazy high on him, but I think where they got him and what their needs are, I think that's a good pick for them. Another really big one I want to talk about is getting Sadiq Bey at 19. To me, that was an unbelievable spot to get him at. I know a lot of people had him going just right after the lottery. And so kind of getting him a little bit past that, I think that's just a good pickup, especially because I had other teams kind of moving up and getting them. So I really like that. And I think also they had that draft night trade of getting rid of Luke Kennard, who I like, but I do agree he's not necessarily fitting the timeline of that team and getting some picks in return to sort of help them hit that reset button, I think is a really good move on their end and moving forward and kind of restructuring their team around Killian Hayes going forward.
Yeah, obviously, and one of our previous series, the Panic or Persist series, the Detroit Pistons are a team that we've been kind of, urging to hit that all in on the reset. And, that's for a lot of reasons, but, they definitely got closer to doing that here tonight or here on the draft night. And I think having a guy like Killian Hayes is able to be a franchise cornerstone potentially of this team down the line. and pair him along potentially Christian Wood if they're able to re-sign him, or, Sekou Doumbouya, and, some of these other picks and moves that they're making. I think, overall, I agree they had a very good draft night.
Awesome. Why don't you go ahead and give us your first loser of the draft?
So my first loser of the draft are the Golden State Warriors. And this is not necessarily for draft reasons, but I want to talk about it anyway. So Klay Thompson, the night before the draft, everyone heard that, that the Warriors were, really worried potentially about his lower left leg. And he was scheduled to get an MRI the next day. And so everyone's thinking, okay, man, is this an Achilles? Is this worse? Let's wait and see what the results of the MRI are before we freak out. And, an hour and a half, 2 hours before the draft starts, we learned that Klay Thompson has torn his Achilles and will be out for the season, which is a huge L. Yes,
It's
it's not.
brutal. It is brutal for
It
the
is not
Warriors.
necessarily draft specific related, but I can't even imagine the conversations that started happening around that draft room. Oh, do we now pick up LaMelo Ball? And since he's available at 2, and we kind of need another guard alongside Steph now that Klay is injured, but they still opted to go with James Wiseman, which the waters on James Wiseman are still pretty untested, and so he's someone that we're gonna just have to wait and see how he translates his game into the NBA. Could be a potential good draft pick for him, and I think it is. But still, overall, when you look at the grand scheme of things, losing Klay Thompson on draft night due to an injury is probably the biggest L potentially ever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to say for sure that's so heartbreaking for him. I mean, just missing the entire year to an ACL injury. Now he's out for a full another year. I mean, that's just absolutely brutal for Klay Thompson, one of the better guys in the league, an absolute stud of a player, and that's just brutal to see. Um, I mean, draft specifically, I didn't think they had a terrible draft. I think they were going to go with Wiseman. I mean, regardless, so I'm more glad than anything that they stayed the course and didn't freak out in regard with Klay's injury and sort of went with the guy that was highest on their draft board. And as you've talked about in previous episodes, you're really high on James Wiseman. So I think he'd be a good pickup to kind of play alongside Steph Curry. In addition, they also got Nico Mannion really late in the second round. I think that's good value. We'll see, is he going to be someone that develops into a point guard in the NBA consistently? But I think where they got him was just like a good value spot for what he was worth. A lot of mock drafts had him going late first round. So getting him late second, I think, is a little bit better value. But I don't know. I agree. I mean, they definitely did not win draft night just because of Klay Thompson's injury. And I mean, without a doubt, their title hopes are out the window for next year.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you saw, but they also traded for Kelly Oubre Jr. I think it was the day after draft night. But they made that trade, which I don't love because I looked at the numbers and bringing in Kelly Oubre's contract cost them like $68 million in regards of paying Kelly Oubre and the money they'll have to pay in luxury tax, which to me just doesn't make sense why you'd bring in a player like that, because you're not winning a title next year with Andrew Wiggins, Steph, Kelly Oubre Jr., Draymond, and James Wiseman. Like there's so many other teams out there that are just a little bit better constructed, and the way like the Warriors play offense, that just, I don't know, that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Andrew Wiggins isn't a great shooter. Draymond is a terrible shooter. James Wiseman's not the best shooter. Kelly Oubre Jr. is not the best shooter. I mean, there's a lot of more inside people, and then you have Steph Curry, the best shooter of all time. I just think they're going to have a really, really hard time, especially Steve Kerr, kind of figuring out a new offensive scheme to sort of make the Warriors work. One question I do have for you is, I mean, do you think the Warriors make the playoffs next year?
I still do. I have faith in the Warriors, just in Steph Curry alone. And, yes, it's a big loss having, Klay out, and they're going to have to reorchestrate that offense. But I think that's something that Steve Kerr and, the rest of that organization is fully capable of doing. They're very competent. And that being said, like, I don't know, that team to me, they have a lot of like mediocre pieces around Steph, like as it currently stands, like Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre. They're not top tier players, but they're still guys that are bucket getters. And, Steph is a certified bucket getter. And then you put James Wiseman in that situation as well. And, this is the first time that they've been able to have kind of a big that they can kind of work some schemes around and maybe have a more elite pick and roll package. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
I still don't hate this team because I mean, even their depth and, what they're going to be able to bring off the bench is not going to be horrible because these are guys that were, starting this season due to all the injuries. So I don't know. Especially not going down into Orlando, not making the bubble. They've had time to just continue working on their team chemistry. Yes, Kelly Oubre is a new addition, but I don't know. I think this Warriors team is going to be coming in hot with a lot to prove. And I think they are fully capable of doing it. I think people forget how elite and game changing Steph Curry is.
That's true, and I agree. Like, I think people forget what Steph can do on the court, and I mean, if he's healthy all next year, like, and they make the playoffs, he might be an MVP discussion next year. I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, people forget this dude can average 30 plus points a game, no problem. And that was with Klay Thompson. And so I think, I mean, honestly, he's a dark horse candidate for me for MVP next year. I think if he can elevate this roster, I mean, you had Chris Paul elevating the Oklahoma City Thunder, who no one expected to be in the playoffs. I do agree. I think the Warriors are going to be in the playoffs, and I think Steph is gonna do some spectacular things next year. Honestly, a lot of this for me just rides on is Steve Kerr going to be able to create some schemes that cater to Steph's playing style, but also like works with the other players and more of their slashing ability and not their shooting ability necessarily. But another big concern I have is also they don't have like who else is going to run the offense besides Steph? Because I know where Steph excels is honestly as a shooting guard, just sprinting around the court for the entire game and catching shoot off screens and things like that. I'm just curious to see who else is going to run that offense. I know Draymond has done that a lot at times. I'm just curious to see has he regressed so much as a player that he's not what he once was? Because last season was definitely horrific. If he can kind of go back to being the Draymond we all know him to be, I definitely agree. This team is someone that I mean I wouldn't be surprised at all to be in middle of the pack in the West. I think people are going to sleep on him for sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go ahead and do my first loser of the NBA draft, and that's the Chicago Bulls. And honestly, for me, it comes down to that pick at 4. I mean, Patrick Williams, picking him at 4th. I I have no rhyme, no reason, no understanding why that's the choice they went with there. I think picking him that high is so overvalued. I mean, there was significant reports coming out of the New York Knicks trying to trade up early in the draft to get Obi Toppin, and you could have easily dropped down to 8, and Patrick Williams guarantee would have been available. He was not someone expected to go until like mid first round at best, maybe late lottery. But I know in our mock draft, I think we had him going in the late teens, early 20s. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think picking him that high is just I don't know. It's mind boggling to me just because there's so many teams that were trying to move up and they easily could have made a trade, brought in some more assets, and still got their guy that they wanted to get. I don't think Patrick Williams by any means is a bad player, but picking him at 4, I think he's more of a project player. He's not. I just don't. I never saw him as a lottery pick, and so it's just I don't know. I just think it's a terrible move by them, especially when they had Abdia right there to pick him up. I just thought that was odd. There's just other players they could have gone with. I believe I saw the report that they're not going to re-sign Chris Dunn, so they're going to have an open spot at point guard. Like Tyrese Halliburton could have been picked up there, who we can get into in a little bit. But I don't know. I just thought, to me, that pick right there is just it was the worst pick of the draft. It blew my mind 100%, and it just makes no sense to me why the Bulls would go that route.
Although, yes, the optics of that pick are bad, I think knowing the fact that, like, after the draft, rumor or like reports that came out that the Bulls had been actively trying to trade down into like the late lottery um, so that they could still pick their guy, but no teams were trying to make trades. And this was a draft that, the entire lottery didn't have a single trade. And so, knowing that they were at least really trying to trade down, they just couldn't, and then with that, they go out and get their guy because no one else is willing to make that trade. And yes, he is a project player. A lot of people are hating on this pick because he didn't even start in college, which granted, I don't think is as worrisome as you might think because, that Florida State offense,
Devin Booker didn't start in college.
no, there's a lot of good players
I agree.
that don't start in college. I don't think that should be like the number one thing, but he is also, the youngest American-born player that was in this draft class, and has a lot of raw, untapped potential. And I don't know. Like this pick is bad. I'm still in agreement.
Yeah, like I don't think Patrick Williams is a bad player. I just think picking him at 4th is just the most mind-boggling thing in the world to me. Like I think they could. My guess is they were asking too much because there were significant reports out there, especially the Knicks is the one team that keeps coming to mind for me, but there were teams out there that were heavily reported trying to move up to get certain guys. And unless the Bulls were asking for too much, that'd be my guess. And that's why trades didn't happen there. It's just, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, you could have gotten, you literally could have gotten this guy, at like the 18th pick. There were other small forwards like Aaron Nesmith, Sadiq Bey expected to come off the board well before Patrick Williams. And so I don't know. Just as a value point of what your pick is worth, it was just too early in the draft for me.
Yeah, that's fair. As soon as I heard about that pick, it definitely reminded me of last season's Suns Cam Johnson pick out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But look at how that's kind of translated. Yes, Cam Johnson's not the best player in that draft class by any means, but he's kind of justified them picking him there.
Yeah.
At this point, and so, only time will tell because the Bulls do now have a new front office. I can't remember the dude's name, but he came from the Denver Nuggets and has been pretty good in the draft in the past. And so that's another reason why I'm kind of, I'm just going to wait and see with this Patrick Williams pick, how it's going to turn out before I start jumping on the hate train. Because I think he has a good enough track record, the GM for the Bulls, that in terms of like rebuilding, like, bringing in new young talent that, I'm just going to have to see it first. So I'll go into my second winner of the draft night, and that's going to be the Sacramento Kings. So there's pretty much one key reason why I think the Sacramento Kings won draft night, and that's getting Tyrese Halliburton at 12. Are you kidding me?
Unbelievable value. Unbelievable.
That's insane.
Steal
Talk
the
about
draft.
a guy that was projected to go somewhere in the 5 to 8 realm, and he was still available time after time. I was like, what are teams not seeing in Tyrese Halliburton? Like, the man is a certified bucket getter, a true 3-and-D player, very, very high IQ. I don't know, just all these other dudes that were picked before him, which, I'll get into one of those teams for my next loser. But I don't know. It was just very perplexing to me. A lot of teams were going for fit, it seemed like. And then, we saw with the Wizards picking Denny, they were, pretty much just going with best available player on the draft board. Can't blame them for that. But I don't know. Pairing Tyrese Halliburton alongside De'Aaron Fox, why not? He's had Buddy Hield alongside him, an elite 3-point shooter that doesn't need the ball all the time. And I know a lot of people are kind of confused about this pick because, they see point guard listed for Tyrese Halliburton, for what he played at Iowa State. But, yes, that's true. But his freshman season, he was not the point guard. He was a shooting guard and was, more reliant on the catch and shoot and, creating offense, through his movement. And I think that's a lot of what the Kings were seeing. and what we can expect for them to kind of scheme around those two young players to kind of try to unlock the next level for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyrese Halliburton, without a doubt, was the steal of draft night, without a doubt in my mind. I mean, incredible value. I had him going either potentially the Bulls, Hawks, things like that. I mean, he was a top 5 talent. It was consensus top 5 talent, where he'd fall maybe just outside of that just because Cavaliers weren't necessarily looking for a point guard at 5. But I mean, I cannot believe he dropped down to 12. Incredible value for the Kings at that pick. Definitely someone I plan on buying in the sports card market. Sort of getting to that a little bit, but he's definitely someone I plan on buying. I think he's going to be an excellent player in the NBA, and especially with talks of them moving away from Buddy Hield and potentially trading him. I know talks have been coming out with him maybe going to the Nuggets. I think Tyrese Halliburton's going to definitely get some active playing time, learning from De'Aaron Fox out there in Sacramento. He's going to be a great player in the NBA for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear your last winner, and then let's talk about a couple honorable mentions.
All right, so my last winner is the Washington Wizards,
Yeah.
and the I just thought in general, I mean, they had a fantastic draft. So they got 2 picks. I think getting Denny Avdia at 9 was incredible value. I think in our draft we had him going at 4 to the Bulls. The fact that he slipped to 9, I know a lot of times throughout the night, ESPN, Mike Schmitz had said that, in his opinion, like LaMelo Ball is the best player in the draft, and right behind him was Denny Avdia. And because they were, I mean, LaMelo's not an international prospect, but he played internationally. That because a lot of people didn't see them play as many games, that's probably why they weren't these consensus like top picks. I think he's incredible value at 9. I love the pickup for the Wizards, which I can't believe for once in my life I'm saying the Washington Wizards are a winner of anything, but incredible. And then also getting Cassius Winston at the 53rd pick out there in the second round. I mean, immense value. I'm surprised he wasn't picked up at the end of the first or early second. I mean, he's someone, in my opinion, that's going to be an outstanding bench point guard in the NBA, really be able to run an offense, sort of a very much more bench version of Rondo, but he's a way better shooter than Rondo is. I think he's just going to he's going to be a fabulous point guard in the NBA for a long time. I love the picks they made in the draft. Those 2 picks were just outstanding in my opinion.
And Cassius Winston's another player that can be going into the headbang game
Yes.
in Washington, because obviously we've seen that from Brad Beal. So,
Yep.
And that's another little trademark of Cassius Winston. So, seeing some headbands on the court might be
Yes,
some good
yes.
for the morale. But no, yeah, I mean, the whole Denny Avdia pick, I agree with you. I think outside of Tyrese Halliburton, that's the best steal of the draft night.
Yep.
And, between those two, we're just going to have to wait and see which one ended up becoming the better steal. But yeah, I mean, Denny's a guy that can play 1 through 4 and has played 1 through 4 at Tel Aviv. And, he's a lot more seasoned than a lot of these guys coming in. He started playing international pro ball at the age of 16. Is one of the youngest players in the Israeli league, and can kind of win games for the team in any sort of respect. Like he has a full package of skill set, or a full that just sounds weird. I don't know what I'm trying to say there.
He has a repertoire.
He has a nice repertoire for sure. But I don't know. I definitely think the Wizards had a nice little draft night, 100%.
So, who is your first honorable mention as a winner?
My first honorable mention of the winner is the Denver Nuggets. Being able to trade in with the Bucks at 24 and snag RJ Hampton there. That just, I mean, the Nuggets are a team that loves to just load up on potential talent, guys that, were very highly ranked, before, their last season. And then, they kind of slipped for one reason or another, whether it's injury or just, not a lot of, notoriety or whatnot, but you know, the Nuggets did the exact same thing, took RJ Hampton here, which RJ Hampton to me has one of the highest ceilings in this draft class, one of the most athletic, explosive players. And I don't know. He was another guy that I was very surprised was falling and falling and falling. And so I'm going to reward the Nuggets for, finally keying in and taking him. That just seems so Nuggets.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. I was genuinely surprised to see RJ Hampton get picked where he was. And I mean, the Nuggets are just setting themselves up for the future. I mean, they've got the team now that can compete for a chip at the same time. I mean, they got Michael Porter Jr., they've got Bull. I mean, Jamal Murray's young, Nikola Jokic is young, and then you just toss in RJ Hampton as a growing sort of project player. But I mean, he's someone in the league that can be that oversized point guard, which is kind of where the NBA is moving to these larger point guards that can do so much more. I definitely agree. I mean, great value at that pick. I love that pick up there. So I have two honorable mentions for winners. The first one I kind of want to do the other, and I'm going to keep them both relatively short. I don't know if you have more honorable mentions as winners too, but so the first one I have is the Orlando Magic. I think getting Cole Anthony at 15. I mean, I thought that was really good value. I think Cole Anthony is going to really surprise a lot of people next season. I just think he had a tough year riddled with injuries. North Carolina just in general didn't have a good roster. I think he's going to be a great NBA player. I think he's going to surprise a ton of people next year. And also, I mean, I'm fairly certain Evan Fournier is potentially getting traded out of there. I know there's been a lot of talks about that because he wants to go to a contender, which is only going to give Cole Anthony even more playing time and ability and options to grow as a player. Also, there's been talks of moving Aaron Gordon out of there. So I just think if those trades or at least one of them occurs, it's just going to allow him to grow as a player and just really become an established point guard in the league. And then the other team I wanted to talk about is the Boston Celtics.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have been heavily talking about how they need to go and get a center. That's where they're failing. That's why they lost. I kind of disagree. I think their biggest issue with last year is just they don't have their hierarchy, which we've kind of talked about on here before on the podcast. And I mean, Gordon Hayward did decline his player option. It's more likely than not, he will not be returning to Boston next year, which I think will help because it's going to help allow no more have a big three instead of that big four. I think it's going to help them out a lot. But I think Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, Enes Kanter, who just picked up his $5 million player option, I think those three are plenty serviceable. I think they do. They'll do a good job, and I think they're fine. I have no worries there. But picking up Aaron Nesmith, just an absolute sniper. I like that pick. Peyton Pritchard, late first round. I mean, he's someone that could develop into be a great bench point guard in the NBA. I think he's going to be someone who in the next couple of seasons sort of mold into that role that Brad Wanamaker currently is in for the Celtics. I really like those two picks. I think those are guys in the future that are going to help out the Boston Celtics. And so that was another reason they're a little bit of a winner for me in the draft.
Yeah, the only reason I don't have them as one of my honorable mentions is because at that 26th pick where they took Peyton Pritchard, I think they should have gone with Tyrell Terry there to be that kind of go-to bench scorer and guy to run the offense off the bench. But, that's just apples and oranges. So, they picked their guy. They've had a lot of success through the draft, so maybe I'm wrong. But I don't know. I definitely would have liked to see Tyrell Terry go there for them.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I guess we're going to see over the next few seasons kind of just see how those players sort of mold in those systems. Do you want to go ahead and give us your last loser of the draft?
So my last loser of the draft is the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
And this is specific to their number 10 pick, drafting Jalen Smith here. And this is kind of what you were talking about with the Bulls. You can get a lot more value by picking him a little bit later in the draft, but also the fact that Tyrese Halliburton was slipping, Devin Vassell was slipping a little bit, and you go after a center here. As soon as I heard that they drafted Jalen Smith, I was absolutely perplexed.
Yep.
I was. they have their center of the future in DeAndre Ayton, assuming he can, stay out of, drug problems or whatever. He's been kind of PEDs and all these other issues that are keeping him off the court over these past seasons. He's one of their cornerstone players. So I don't know why they felt the need to get like a bench center that can stretch the floor. I don't really see him getting starting minutes. And so with that being said, they had plenty of decent wing options. They had Aaron Nesmith available. They had Devin Vassell available. There's not a huge need for them to get Tyrese Halliburton or Kyra Lewis since they just brought in Chris Paul. But at the same time, why not have kind of a safety insurance for if an old Chris Paul isn't performing well or gets injured? It was just a very puzzling pick to me. And so that's why they were my other loser of the draft night.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. It's so odd to be picking Jalen Smith there at 10 when there's so many other options and players available. And it all comes down to a value standpoint. I mean, even if Jalen Smith is like your guy and you think he's one of the best players in the draft, you need to also factor in like, where can we still get our guy and have it be a valuable pick? If we can move down in the draft and get assets and still get our guy, why would we not do that? So yeah, I agree. After making a monumental trade to get Chris Paul, and people were like, wow, like the Suns might be making the playoffs next year, like watch out for them. And then they make this pick. It makes me very concerned if I was a Phoenix Suns player about what the future is with this GM and what sort of other moves he may make going into the future, any potential trades. I mean, just a very, very odd pick for sure.
Yeah, I mean, think about if they would have picked Aaron Nesmith here, a wing that is a shoot. Well, in his Vanderbilt stretches, shot 50% from three.
Yep.
You put that alongside Devin Booker for additional spacing. And then you have DeAndre Ayton down low. Chris Paul is going to be an absolute monster and have so many options to, I don't know. That just very puzzling pick for Jalen Smith here. And it definitely gives me pause on kind of the direction of the Suns going forward.
Completely agree. So I'm going to do my last loser of the 2020 NBA draft. And without fail, it is, you guessed it, the New York Knicks.
Oh, we guessed it.
I mean, a lot of people are high on Obi Toppin. They think he's box office. He was the Naismith Player of the Year. And I understand that. And he was their guy. There were significant talks about them moving up into the draft, trading up so they could get Obi Toppin because that's who they wanted. How many forwards can the New York Knicks have on their roster? I just don't get it. You needed a point guard. Tyrese Halliburton was available for you at 8. He fell down to you. He was in your lap. And you went with Obi Toppin, who we are both agreed and that we're not high on him. That pick was just so puzzling to me. They did have the 25th pick and they got Emmanuel Quickly, which I don't think is a terrible pick. I mean, he's a shooter, helps stretch the floor a little bit. But that Obi Toppin pick blew my mind. To me, they are a massive draft night loser. However, one thing I do want to add on is they have made a lot of other moves outside of that in regards to dropping all their player options for the terrible contracts they signed with players when they didn't get KD, Kyrie, and Zion. Smart move by them because I think they're up to $40 million in free cap space now. I know they made a couple other moves to get some future picks. I do think they've done a better job and made some smarter moves in that sense. But I mean, the Obi Toppin pick just blew my mind. I don't understand why, when your point guard was your biggest need in this draft, you had the second best point guard behind LaMelo and Tyrese Halliburton fell down to you and you decided not to pick them. I don't get it.
I think it might be because they're just going to pay Fred VanVleet that bag.
Which, in my opinion, is absolutely ridiculous.
We're talking about a draft night loser that doesn't know how to run an organization. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. You know what? We're going to get into it. There's been talks and reports of the New York Knicks paying Fred VanVleet upwards of like $24 million in 1 year. $24 million a year. Are you kidding me? Classic Knicks. Classic Knicks. I don't get it.
Classic,
I don't get it.
classic.
I just, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I mean, I know you also aren't high on Obi Toppin, but I just, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Terrible. In my opinion, it's a terrible pick there.
I mean, I will say, like, I don't think it was a surprising pick.
I would agree. It wasn't surprising. I just think it was a bad move.
Yes, agreed. But like, so on draft night, I was studying, and so I wasn't able to watch the draft live, but I was getting updates from one of my friends, and I was guessing who was getting picked at the next available spot once the next pick would come in, and I kept saying out loud like, this team's not stupid enough to pick Obi Toppin. This team's not stupid enough to pick Obi Toppin. Once it got to the Knicks, I said they took Obi
This
Toppin.
team's stupid enough to pick up Obi Toppin.
Their organization is absolutely a train wreck, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have any honorable mention losers?
Ooh, honorable mention losers. I'll say the Hawks. In the fact that I think Onyeka Okongwu is a very good player. My only concern is, why did they not go for like Tyrese Halliburton? I guess a lot of our losers just like, you should have taken Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
But like, it made too much sense. They need someone that can have some more defense. They needed a defensive guard alongside Trae Young.
I agree.
And Tyrese Halliburton is that guy, and it can also knock down shots. Like, what that does it just make too much sense for them?
Well, and they also just traded for Clint Capella. I like Onyeka Okongwu as a player. I think he's going to be a great defender and rim protector. But I mean, him alongside John Collins and Clint Capella is on your roster, I do agree, is a bit of a perplexing pick for me.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to get on the floor his rookie season, which this is a young Hawks team that should be trying to give as many minutes to all the young guys, try to continue to let them develop, get real game time minutes. And I don't know. I don't see it happening as much as I think a loser of the draft night is Onyeka Okongwu, because he could have gone to a lot of these teams and, been getting minutes every single night. Potential starter and potentially win rookie of the year. But then he goes to a situation like the Hawks that already has John Collins, already has Clint Capella, and he's probably not going to be able to find his way onto the court a whole lot. And so I don't know. It's just sad to me because Onyeka Okongwu's a guy that I really like. He was dripped out on draft night. But, it is what it is.
Yeah. So I don't have any honorable mention losers I want to bring up, but I do have a couple picks that I'd like to hear your thoughts on.
Okay.
So the first one is Kyra Lewis Jr. going to the Pelicans at 13. I'm curious to hear. I think, in my opinion, a little bit overvalued, but I don't think it's anything crazy at pick 13. But I am curious to kind of hear what your thoughts are. Why do you think the Pelicans might have picked him there? And what do you think their plans are? And I don't know, just in general, why would they pick him?
So, in my opinion, Kyra Lewis is one of the top point guards in this draft. I know that's not an extremely high take, but for me, it kind of goes – and I don't know, granted, where to put LaMelo in my rankings just because he could be number 1, he could be number 30. But I kind of have Killian Hayes, Tyrese Halliburton, maybe Cole Anthony, and then Kyra Lewis right there. And so, I don't know. For me, Lonzo Ball, I think they're making this pick because they might be looking to trade Lonzo Ball is kind of my initial instincts whenever I saw this. But I don't know. I don't hate this pick, honestly, because Kyra Lewis is a guy that can bring a lot of slashing and I don't know, explosive energy off the bench, which, Lonzo, sorry, it's hardened with 2 balls in the league now. Lonzo's a guy that kind of, yes, he has the elite dimes across the court, in transition and whatnot, but he's also whenever he's doing the half court set, he definitely slows down the pace a lot more than a guard, in my opinion. for New Orleans should. I think kind of similar to what we saw from the Kings 2 seasons ago, this Pelicans team needs to be a high octane, up and down the court, at lightning speed. And I think potentially that's why they're bringing Kyra Lewis in, just to potentially try that out during practice. You know, he's a guy that can facilitate that type of offense as opposed to Lonzo. And so maybe they're just trying to work on some different schemes to try to unlock some more potential from Zion and, you know, some of their young players. And I think he's a guy that can at least give them other options.
Yeah, so at first, I didn't like it. When I saw the pick, I was like, wow, like why? I was like, I mean, you still have Aaron Neesmith on the board. You have Cole Anthony. I think either one of those two, I think would have initially made more sense. I mean, Lonzo's a great facilitator and defender. You bring in Cole Anthony as your secondary guard, and now you have another scoring option alongside Brandon Ingram and Zion. Aaron Neesmith really helps stretch the floor for your team, just an absolute sniper. And so I didn't like it at first, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, let's think about this. I mean, Kyra Lewis Jr. is the fastest player in the draft. He's an absolute lightning bolt across the court. And as you noted, that's how the Pelicans play. I mean, let's get out in transition and push the pace as much as possible. And Lonzo does that a lot, and Zion does that a lot. And then you have BI to sort of be that scorer in the half court setting. And so I think bringing on a secondary sort of pusher the pace is really going to be a big deal for them. I think it's going to help loosen the load a lot on Lonzo. Personally, I don't think they're going to trade Lonzo Ball. I think they're going to try and make it work with both them two playing alongside one another, especially because they did trade Drew Holiday. So they were sort of looking for that secondary guard option. But I do like it. I do think it's sort of the one person it doesn't help is Nickeil Alexander-Walker because he ain't playing anymore now. But I do think it's going to be someone else that helps. I think it was a pick to sort of solidify the identity of that team. That's just let's push it and run it. And so I the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? Let me see what the kids got, and let me see them on the NBA court playing, because I do think it's going to end up being a nice pick for them. I think he's going to really fit into their system really well.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to get your thoughts on a specific pick to me, and that's 27. The Jazz select Udoka Azubuike. So
I know it's your guy.
Okay, well, also, like, I don't think there was a single mock draft that ever had him going in the first round. And yet here we are. And we were talking second round sleepers. I was seeing him like on the big board of a lot of these like online sites, big boards, like him in the like late 50s, early 60s. And then the Jazz said what I was saying, and they heard what I was saying, and so they picked him. They said, all right, if Davis believes in him, we'll believe in him. And so I think that's pretty cool. Shout out to the Utah Jazz for listening to this podcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking some draft advice from us for sure. But to get into it, I don't absolutely hate it. As we've talked about, I mean, he's a bruiser, and that's his role. He's going to be a guy that, I mean, in the league, I kind of see him as not a sort of a worse version of Steven Adams, a bruiser, and that's what you know him for. He's setting monster screens for your team. He's dunking the ball, and that's about it. And that's not a bad thing in the NBA. I'm curious to see how he can develop under Rudy Gobert. Can he sort of become a defensive player of the year type of talent behind him? Time will tell. He is a big boy. Curious to see if he can sort of develop the lateral quickness and foot speed that Rudy Gobert has to stick with players that are a bit undersized compared to him. I don't hate it. I really don't. I think, I mean, there's other centers after him that it kind of just depends on what the Jazz are looking for. I mean, Vernon Carey was still on the board. He got picked in the second round. But I don't know. At the end of the day, I mean, I don't think it's crazy good or crazy bad. I think I'm okay with it. I am curious to see how he will develop in that system out there in Utah.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, sorry, you cut out there for a second, so I thought you were done speaking. But so I don't know. I like Udoka Azubuike, but I'm actually not a fan of this pick, and I think that's a large part of a large reason behind that being that Rudy Gobert is already there and he's not stretching the floor at all. And, so therefore you're not going to bring in Udoka Azubuike, play him at the 4 or something, and also have him on the court. And so, like, for me, like, why would the Jazz not go for someone like Desmond Bane or Tyrell Terry that was available there that they could kind of play alongside Donovan Mitchell and kind of slot him in for the next Joe Ingles? Like, Joe Ingles, yes, he's okay, but I think if you're looking for a spot that you could really be improving your team instantly, it'd be getting another wing scorer that can kind of take over Joe Ingles' spot. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know. Like, again, like Joe Ingles, I don't know if I've ever said it on this specific podcast, but Joe Ingles is that like dad that's at the gym. He's that gym rat all the time, and whenever you're playing pickup games, he might be one of the last picks. But then once he comes onto the court, you're like, yeah, he's kind of nice. Like he's kind of tearing it up out here. And Joe Ingles is just the NBA's version of that. He doesn't look like he would be tearing it up on the draft or on
drop
the
30 on your head.
yeah, but he's kind of a bucket getter. But Udoka Azubuike, picking him here. I don't know. I'm not in love with it, but I think the Utah Jazz are most likely doing it for the fact that Rudy Gobert might not be there forever, and so they're kind of looking for who can be the next center that can kind of play into our specific offensive schemes very well. And I do think that Udoka Azubuike can kind of fit that specific mold because similarly to Rudy, he's not going to be stretching the floor, knocking down threes, and he's very defensive minded as well. And so I don't know. Maybe it's just trying to find a similar player that can kind of develop into that next Rudy Gobert for once they kind of feel like they have got as much as they can get out of Rudy Gobert and decide to move on from him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two questions I want to ask you before we wrap up the episode. So the first one is there any who after we now we know like what players are going to what teams? Who is your dark horse candidate to win Rookie of the Year? Dark horse.
Give me a second. I'm doing a lot of mental calculations in my head right now.
Is it Alexei Pokusevsky?
It is not Alexis Pokusevsky. I actually might go Tyrese Haliburton for dark Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to be getting a lot of minutes. The Kings' offense is an offense that kind of can unlock that next part in his game. And I think, the absence of Buddy Hield, assuming that Buddy Hield will be gone in that backcourt, is going to play well and get Tyrese Haliburton to be playing, starter minutes. He's going to be out there a lot. And my front runner pick that I called on the last episode, Obi Toppin, I mean, he's going to be getting minutes as well. He's going to be out there, primary option for that team one way or the other, whether you like it or not. And so I think both of those picks are still very relevant.
Yeah, so for me, I have to go with Cole Anthony. I just think he's going to get significant playing time out in Orlando. And I mean, I think the dude's going to average upper teens in points. I mean, I really do. I'm really high on Cole Anthony. I really think he's going to light it up in the NBA. I mean, every year in the draft, there's always that person that's late lottery right outside of it that sort of becomes one of the better players in that draft. I mean, it's consistent. And I think he's going to be that guy. I really do. I think he's going to really surprise a lot of people. And I think he's going to be fantastic out in Orlando. And then, so yeah, the last question I wanted to ask you, I know it doesn't have a lot to do with the draft, but just because there's been so many crazy big time trades going on. And we got Chris Paul going to Phoenix, Drew Holiday going to Milwaukee, Dennis Schroeder to LA. Out of all the trades that have happened so far, which one are you the most happy about? I mean, which one are you like, that is the best trade?
So I think a trade that not a lot of people are talking about that I think is highly impactful is actually Robert Covington going to the Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm.
So the Trailblazers are a team that we've talked about doesn't have any wing defense, and their defense has been like one of their biggest question marks this entire year. And has been one of the reasons why they're not able to make deep runs into the playoffs. And so, you bring in a guy like Robert Covington, that's probably one of the best true 3-and-D players, and, is that specialist. I think they are instantly, in my eyes, they are now a title contender. And I know that's ridiculous to say,
Wow.
but I really think that much of Robert Covington going into that specific system. And because, I mean, if you think about their starting lineup, it'll be CJ, Damian Lillard, Robert Covington, Yusuf Nurkic, and then maybe who am I leaving off right there? Well, I mean, Zach Collins. Well, you'll also have Zach Collins, Troy or Gary Trent coming off the bench. Like
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot of depth. They have a lot of veterans, and now they have that defense to complement their scoring options from the backcourt. And we're going to get a full season of healthy Nurkic, hopefully. Like I think they're one of my dark horse teams to potentially be vying for the championship next season.
Yeah, so I think without a doubt, it has to be the Dennis Schroeder trade in the fact of what the Lakers had to give up.
No,
So,
that's
I
fair.
mean, they gave up Danny Green, a first round pick. And that might have been it.
I think it was, yeah.
I think that's it. And that first round pick was, hold on, I had it up right here. I think it was Jalen Smith. No, not Jalen Smith.
Jaden McDaniels.
Maybe. Hold on, I have it up right here. It is, Jaden McDaniels. Yes. So they go Danny Green, Jaden McDaniels to get Dennis Schroeder, who should have won Sixth Man of the Year last season. Absolute steal, in my opinion. And I'm gonna look directly in the camera when I say this. Sam Presti, if you're doing this to make your picks more valuable from the Los Angeles Clippers, I love it. You're playing 3D chess and everyone else is playing checkers, and I am here for it. I love it.
I was about to
Great
say,
move.
yeah, no, I was about to say the exact same thing because I think that's honestly a very realistic
That's some
scenario.
next level stuff right there by GM.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have a 1 metric ton of draft picks from the Clippers, right? And you know that Paul George and Kawhi are both unrestricted free agents.
Yep.
Or wait,
They're unrestricted free agents after next season.
Yeah, after next season. And so the quicker they're able to get those guys to leave out the Clippers, those picks become instantly more valuable because they're not getting anything in return for those players. And it's just easy dealing after that.
Yeah,
so
they were able to. Dennis Schroeder doesn't fit their timeline. They were able to flip Danny Green for more picks, and they have to take on Al Horford's contract, which to them is perfectly okay right now because they're getting all these picks in return. And in a couple years after Al Horford's contract's up, they don't have to re-sign him.
I also love how the Thunder have been like trading. Okay, so they traded Chris Paul and they got some players in return and some picks, and then they trade
flipping them for picks.
More picks, and then I don't know. I just think it's very funny because it seems like
18 first round picks over the next 6 years. 18.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Psychotic. They might make their team. The Thunder might be. We might be talking about the Thunder 8 years, maybe not even 8. We might be talking about the Thunder in like 3 or 4 years, just like we were talking about the Celtics of, wow, they're a title contender and they still have first round picks. That's going to be Thunder, but it's literally going to be next level. Like they're going to have their team is going to be so good because they're going to get all these picks from bad teams. And if those picks just like hit in the lottery, I mean, it's nuts. It is going to be absolutely nuts. And so I don't know. I do think, just to touch back on the Lakers though, I do think the Lakers need to make a move or something. I'd really like to see them pick up another piece, especially with the Bucks definitely making really big moves on their roster. Someone I'd love for them to go get, especially because that team is sort of blown up at this point. And there's been talks about them moving away from PJ Tucker. I would love to see maybe Kyle Kuzma and something for PJ Tucker. I don't know. Apparently, there's been reports that a lot of teams are high on Kuzma around the league. Personally, I'm not. I don't know. I think the Lakers should try and go get another option, maybe a defensive-minded player that doesn't necessarily need the ball. Very 3-and-D. I do think PJ Tucker would be awesome in the Lakers system. I think he can just be an incredible defender for them and just shoot the corner three, sit in the corner. I'd like to see that a lot. I really would. But I do think they need to make another move. I really do.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So, all right. Well, that wraps up our winners and losers special of the 2020 NBA draft. This is the Junkie Sports Media Podcast. Peace.
Peace.